Well, it was a humdinger of a homily. It was full of passion and prophetic power. It sounded like today's first reading, in which the prophet Jeremiah denounces the leaders of ancient Israel for their faithlessness, their failures, and their fears. It was the homily I planned to give this weekend. I was going to start by directing my anger toward our president and his reluctance to step back and truly examine if he has the stamina to actually be the president for a possible 4 more years. But even more so, why the media cares so much. I mean, the opioid crisis is continuing to grow. The racism and bigotry toward non-Christians in our country continues to grow. We continue to feed hate. We have an assassination attempt on a presidential candidate. And I don't care what your party is and what you believe, but you don't wish or actually do harm to another human being. It's as I said a few weeks ago, what good has that kind of death done? What problems has that actually ever solved? And then I was going to direct my anger at Planned Parenthood. One leader at Planned Parenthood can be seen on video calmly sipping a glass of wine as she discusses the fact that Planned Parenthood sells the baby parts that remain after an abortion is performed. Another official from Planned Parenthood called this commerce a humanitarian activity. So we have reached a point in the United States where a company that kills babies and sells their parts is now called a human rights organization. But Christian churches who hold to the traditional definition of marriage are called hate organizations. And then I was going to be fire and brimstone finished about a white supremacist and an extreme right Trump supporter who are now attacking J.D. Vance's wife, their own vice presidential candidate's spouse, because she's Indian and she's not a Christian. That article was in the Washington Post on Thursday. It was a humdinger of a homily. Some of you would have loved it. Some of you would have hung me out to dry. Some of you would have called the bishop and said, "You got to get this crazy man out of here." But at least I would have unloaded my anger. But that's the problem. Anger. No matter what your political convictions, you can always find a long list of things to be angry about. You can be angry about Joe Biden and John Fetterman's oversized, dirty-looking sweatshirt. 3 of you got that reference, okay. You can be angry about Josh Hawley or Lindsey Graham or Donald Trump's hair. I'm not sure what color that is. I've wondered that for many years now. You can be angry about all kinds of things, even immigration policies. You can be angry about court decisions. You can be angry about the Confederate flag. You can be angry about the raging war in Israel and Gaza. You can be angry about the ongoing effects of racism. And if you're a pastor, you might be tempted to give a sermon which vents your anger until the Lord invites you to read the scriptures yet again. Sure, in today's first reading, the prophet Jeremiah sounds a bit angry first. Who doesn't like a reading which starts, "Woe to you, I, the Lord, will punish you your evil deeds." But the prophet Jeremiah does not stay in the woe to you mode very long. Jeremiah continues preaching. And through him, God says, "I myself will care for my people so that they no longer need to fear or tremble, and my people will dwell securely." The prophet who sounded so angry concludes with a promise, God's promise, that God will draw his people to himself and care for them and lead them, and they no longer need to fear. And St. Paul echoes that promise. 3 times in the short reading, Paul promises that Christ has given us peace. 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 3 times, St. Paul reminds us that in Christ we find our peace. In Christ. Nowhere else. No one else. In Christ. And in today's gospel, Jesus invites his disciples to come with him, to come to him, to be with him, to rest with him, to be focused on him. They've been busy, they've been on the road, they've been out there working hard, fighting evil, doing good, even when doing good wasn't easy. And did you notice what everyone else in the countryside was doing? They were trying to answer two questions. Where is Jesus right now, and how do we get close to him quickly? All of those people from the villages and the countryside understood something that I have forgotten this past week. This past week, when I was angry and worried and fearful, these simple country folk from ancient Galilee lived in difficult and fearful times too. The Romans had taken over their land. Injustice was everywhere. The future was uncertain. Poverty was always possible. So was hunger and illness and death. They were afraid, but what did they do when they were angry or afraid or worried? They asked two questions. Where is Jesus? And how do I get close to him quickly? They were focused on Jesus, centered on Jesus, bringing all of their cares and their worries to Jesus. And when they did that, they found peace. Their lives did not instantaneously become perfect, but they always found peace when they brought their concerns and their worries and their joys and their lives to Jesus. And that is precisely what I failed to do this past week. That is precisely what I was failing to do as I wrote a humdinger, angry homily. You see, I spent most of this past week reading my Apple News sources, as I do every week, as I do every day. From the Wall Street Journal to the New York Times to the National Review to Politico, the list goes on, and I just got angrier and angrier about the things going on in the world. And I spent a lot of time fretting and fussing and worrying and stroking my anger. And my best friend from New York, Kevin, who read at my anniversary celebration, has been visiting me the last couple of days, and we got talking about politics and the world, and that helped to feed my anger, and it helped to stroke it even more, and it felt so good. But I spent very little time bringing all of this to Jesus or focusing on Jesus or asking Jesus what he wants me to do about all of this. In other words, I spent lots of time angering, but very little time praying. Staying angry takes work, and being angry is exhausting. Ignoring Christ will never bring me peace. And it dawned on me, when I fall into my angry at every politician and every sinner mode, I'm actually behaving like an atheist. That is, when I'm so focused on my anger and my indignation, I have convinced myself that it's up to me and people like me to save the world. But it's not up to me. Christ already saved the world. It's not simply up to me. Christ is bigger than my fears and stronger than my worries and more peaceful than my angers and more just than I can ever comprehend. So I'm not going to spend my time this coming week talking about or condemning every politician who disappoints me, or am I going to fret about people who scare me? But before I do anything else, I need to find out where Jesus is and how I can quickly get near to him. I need to pray and not pout. I need to listen and be still and let God speak first. If I don't ask Christ what I should do, then whatever I do will probably be misguided. And if I do not focus on Christ, all I will see is my fears and my worries and my angers, and none of those will bring me life, and none of them will bring me peace. Woe to you, Sean, shepherd of your flock. Woe to you if you try to do this alone. Woe to you, Sean, if you only listen to your fears. Come to Christ, Sean. Come and focus on the one who's already saved the world. Come to Christ who conquered death. Come to Christ who comes to us in bread and wine. Where did we go wrong as people to think that an angry person, which is what I was this past week, an angry person is who could save the world. Because if I remember correctly, it was anger that fed the people that killed Jesus, who in turn thought they had made the world a better place through that action. But no, it was love that changed the world, and it was love that conquered death. And it is only love that will change the world we live in today once again. So after this last week and these scriptures that God threw in my face, I think I know what I will do with my anger in this coming week. What are you going to do with yours?